So up next is today's program. So I'll invite up Linda Brown, and then we're going to kind of take turns speaking. So Linda.
We have we have slides and a video to show. I'm just going to introduce, and each one of us is going to get up and talk. There were 5 members of the club that were there at the project for 5 or 6 days. We're there. Okay, good. So this was a travel project to Tena, Ecuador, and we were in the Napo province. And I believe that Tim probably was on his river cruise on the Napo River. Is that correct? Yep. And so anyway, we visited what were called the Kichwa communities, and that's where the project was. So I'm going the wrong way. There we go. So I only have one slide with words on it, and I want to talk about the project and what got it started, but it was really full of partnerships. It's okay. We did this project because a year ago we were ready to write a grant, and the district grants are all due June 1. And we were looking for a project. We had one, it fell through. Somebody said, call Chuck Root and see if we can add on to this project. So Chuck's here as our guest today. And it was because of him that all of this kind of came about for our club. He had written a global grant. Anyways, and I also want to thank him. We also worked with the Yakum Foundation in Tena, Ecuador, and we didn't work directly with them, but the Global Grant did work with the Rotary Club of Quito, and they were instrumental in making this whole project happen. I also want to give special thanks to Mike McComb. He's not here, from the Yakum Foundation. He was with us pretty much every minute that we were down in Ecuador, gave up a lot of his personal time, toured us around, took us to dinner, and had so many amazing things set up for us. So our impact was, we wrote a district grant for 24-25. It was for $4,000. Our club contributed 2,000. The district contributed 2,000. And we were supposed to plant 2,000 trees. They were able to buy 4,000. So it was a great project that way. It impacted the areas of environment, but also economics. It's cacao trees, which the price of chocolate is very high right now. So it will be a great economic benefit for these communities. And then as I already mentioned, it dovetailed into a significant global grant that was written by the Medford Club, the Tuesday Club, which provided over 12,500 trees. So we added another 4,000 to that. Anyway, and there was great, and what you're going to see, what's coming next is all the photos of the amazing cultural exchange we had with 5 Kichwa communities. And then beyond that, just fellowship. The group of us that went, it was just a lifetime Amazonia experience. And then the next thing, I'm going to show a real short video. It's less than a minute and a half. Just one of many, many things that we experienced down there. Okay, so there's a bunch of us. We are on short on time, but Rachel's going to come up next and you'll see that. But the dancing, we all had to get up and dance at 3 of these communities with these people. So anyway, Rachel.
Thank you, Linda. I think at the end we'll have Tim demonstrate our dance that we learned. So we're going to take turns, like Linda said, and each kind of cover like the cultural experience, the project experience, and then the fellowship. So highlights for me were you can see in this top picture that thatched roof, and then the bottom right, that's the exterior of that building. But we went to this women's community where these women, so women in their culture have influence. So they do live in a very, the women carry the babies around. You'll see that in photos too, and they do cooking and that, and the men go out and work in the forest and bring home the bacon per se. But women do have influence in their community. So it's not, that was a little bit surprising to me. So, and these women work together, and this particular photo with that's our leader, Mike, resting in the hammock after many days of lots of rain and walking and all the things. But the women kind of get together and they've created this resort style lodge. And they have a beautiful restaurant. We had our nicest, fanciest meal there. And that's where we bought our chocolate that we just auctioned off. And so the women really are working together to have an economic impact and earn money for their communities and work together to um, continue their culture and have fun doing it. So, and then let's see, my other cultural highlight was watching George eat a grub. So you can see in the bottom that pan of grubs, they were wiggling around and they were fat and juicy. And they, one of the communities brought out, you see in one of the next slides, you'll see these beautiful fruit displays that they laid out for us, like kind of our version of our charcuterie board. They've got all this local fruit, and one of the things they brought out was roasted grubs. And so they came in this little leaf, and I don't know that they had any seasoning, but they were roasted over the fire. And George was brave enough to try one. And while I was watching his reaction and deciding if I should try one, he said it tasted like bacon. Uh, and then I got up the nerve to try one, turned around, they were all gone. So, but that was definitely a cultural highlight. And then when I saw them crawling in the pan the next day, I was glad I didn't eat one. And then as far as the project itself, the food forest was really interesting. Before we went, and even after, everybody had been asking, well, what did you plant? Bananas. And we planted and saw, we planted cacao ourselves, but a lot of the project involved all these fruits that I had never heard of. So if we go to the next slide, I think there's a photo. Yeah. So I would try to take photos of the plants and then label them with what they were. So we've heard of plantains. They also had something called ice cream bean, where you peel open this plant and then inside are all these pulpy seeds and you can suck on them. They kind of taste like vanilla ice cream. And then a chonta palm, bananas we've heard of, tree grapes, and yucca were just some of the many, many fruits that we got to taste and that these people live on. So we had these beautiful buffets of fruit every day as part of our meal that the villages provided. Um, and then as far as fellowship, we had some interesting transportation situations. I was lucky enough to have really bad motion sickness. So the group was kind enough to let me ride in the front. But I think further down the road, you'll see a picture of the teeny tiny van that we were in. But a highlight for me was driving. We were standing in the back of a pickup and crossing the river, kind of like Indiana Jones. So George and Lorenzo and I are standing in the back, and other people were piled into the cab. And I think there were 6 or 8 villagers like hanging off the back of the bed. But that was a highlight for me for sure. And these Rotarians are very hardy, I will say. So Alexa and I both were impressed with how durable everybody was in all the rain. So we come from Oregon. It rains a lot here, not so much in Southern Oregon, but we get a lot of rain, and I'd never been so wet in my life. So it rained every day, a lot, and you can see some photos of that. So up at the top left, we were walking through an animal sanctuary in the pouring rain. Top right, we were going down the river in the pouring rain. And on bottom left, you can see Alexa. As the boat would rock, that little canopy above would fill with water. And as the boat would rock, the water would slosh out and down her pants. And Tim thought that was quite funny. And then there we are getting out of the boat in the slippery mud. Um, and bottom right, we're looking at a garden. So when we think of like farming, we think of a plot of land with rows of plants and it's very organized and all this. They had just sort of sections in the rainforest where they planted fruit bearing trees, and different families and women were kind of charged with taking care of those particular trees. So this was somebody's garden that they were showing us in the pouring rain. So yeah, I think that's my portion. So I'll turn it over to Tim is next. So come on up, Tim. Yeah, do the dance for us. Can we turn that music back on?
We don't have the spear here, so you can't do the dance without the spear. No, doesn't work. So just a couple impressions that I had. When they did the dance, you'll notice all the men on the right-hand side, and that's only about half of them, but they did the dance not just for us, but they were doing it for their own community too. And the enthusiasm that the community had for these 8 or 9 dancers was fun to watch. Um, One of the things that we learned is we were the first uh, Americans, actually foreigners, to visit uh, in this area, and they were obviously what's the word? They were impressed that we came, very gracious, very excited, and it gave us a pretty good feeling to know that we were there working side by side with them. And for some of them, they'd never seen an American. Next slide. The thing I like when we travel to Guatemala and with this trip and other trips overseas is the children, and they gave a pretty good story here. We visited these 5 villages, and then Eden and I visited 3 other Quechua villages or communities, they call them, along the Amazon. And everyone in these communities had the same ritual. They get up in the morning, about 4 o'clock in the morning, and the older folks in the community gets together with all the kids, and they drink this tea, which is a really good tasting tea, and it's also for their health. A lot of what they eat and drink is for their health, um, and it prevents everything from mosquito bites to sunburn, just with the natural foods they eat. But they get up, and the older gentlemen, their job is to teach culture to these young kids before they go to school. And they have music. In fact, we got one of the older gentlemen with the violin that kind of sort of could play the violin, and would and he also told a story in the Quechua language that they give to the young kids. And then the kids go to school, and every community, every one of the 7 communities that we visited, or 8 communities we visited, had a school that was built by the government, and they were fairly nice schools. I don't know how their interior was. We just saw the exterior, but the kids are incredible. They're all clean. They have uniforms. They're well behaved. This is one of the pictures is them eating all together and sharing the food. They waited until we were served and we grabbed all the fruit we could off the table or the floor, wherever it was served. And then they just dove in. And they're very small, like the children in Guatemala. And Mike was saying it was because nutrition, and a lot of it is nutrition. They're always hungry. These kids are always hungry, but they also have open fires. They burn over open fires. And from the time that the kids are on the front of the ladies in their pouches or whatever they hold the kids with, they're leaning over the fires cooking. And that has contributed a lot to the stunted growth of the children, but they're all just beautiful kids. I don't know if, do I have another slide? Oh, and the other thing that we really enjoyed is we did a lot of hiking, um, mainly during dry weather. But the countryside is beautiful, and the birds that you hear when you're walking, you never see them because they're always hiding in the jungle. But that was a real fun part of the trip. There no bridges that go over these rivers, but they do have some gondolas. And Eden and I took a trip across the river in the gondola and came back. It was kind of fun. It was pretty high up. Oh, already there. I can't go back. Okay.
Um, this is the second trip I've taken. Last year, I went to Puerto Rico for a water project. And I remember definitely when I was leaving for that, my wife went with me on that one. I came down to the bottom of the stairs and was putting on my traveling shoes. And I basically said, I can't believe I'm doing this. I don't know, but it was just the thought I had at the time. And I have to say that that was okay. Going to Puerto Rico was fine and was a good project, but I really enjoyed this trip a lot more than our trip to Puerto Rico. That sign there, that's what first caught my interest. I don't think I took a picture of anything except the alpacas at the hotel, Quito Hotel, until I saw that. And that sign is we were driving from Quito to Kenya, over the mountains. And it's at a really nice rest stop, just a really nice truck stop, good bathrooms, and a store that has every snack you could ever think of. But anyway, so I walked across the street. At first, I thought it was a recruitment sign, but it's not. It says, since the implementation of Directive 111, we have regained control of our prisons. And it urges the people to unite in a new Ecuador. Kind of threw me. I remember when I was little, that used to go to Mexico, and this didn't happen very often. But when I was in Mexico, pre-teen, I used to see a lot of soldiers on the street. And I don't know why. It just bothered me, seeing soldiers on the street everywhere. But anyways, Directive 101 was a directive issued in January of last year. And it was basically a shutdown of Ecuador has a big problem with basically Colombian gangs and Colombian cocaine. So that was, it had a very high murder rate. So that's what the new elected president did. And basically it shut down freedom of assembly. The national police and the military could search wherever they wanted. Correspondence of anybody in custody could be open and read. And there was a very porous transit curfew. So that kind of threw me. But anyways, that was not the great part. The great part was actually visiting over there with the people in these various communities. As you can see there, young ladies painting my face. I remember when I was a new lawyer and I visited another new lawyer in her office, and she sent me a picture and said, "You look like an Aztec warrior." And no, I look like a person sitting in a chair in her office. Uh, but I sent a picture of this to my wife and daughter. It says, "I'm an Amazon warrior." Okay. And as we were entering that place in there, that's where one of the first presentations was done. There's other pictures of this. And in fact, there'll be a picture of a gentleman kind of telling the story that has already been talked about. But for whatever reason, Mike was unavailable for a little bit. So with my very bad Spanish, I was left interpreting for the rest of the group what this gentleman was saying. And obviously Mike did it better, but one thing that Mike did that I could never do is just listen forever. And they were telling these stories, and then basically he could say it all back, incredible memory. But he kind of did miss one thing. In this place, they were showing us some spears and some other lance type things. And yes, we had to do a dance with the spears and the lances, but that was only for the men. But the one part Mike forgot to mention, so this is new to the rest of the group even, that basically those spears and lances were given to 12-year-olds at the time of their 12th birthday, and their job was to go bring some food back to mom. And again, that matriarch thing is pretty strong. That's exactly the way he said it, bring food back to mom. So anyways, got through that, and that was fine. Over here on your left, I don't know why, but they felt we had to have some assistance in planting some of these cocoa trees or plants. And that was the young lady assigned to help me, or to at least oversee me and make sure I didn't screw up. Well, you know, I'm kind of used to that. That's kind of what my wife and daughter always do. But anyways, I got to talk to her a little bit, and as you might be able to see, she has a baby on that sling. Well, not a baby. She told me that was her 18-month-old daughter, and the feet are a little chunky, so that was a load she was carrying there. But anyways, she said that she had two other daughters, and so I asked her, "Well, does your husband want a son?" And she said, "I fulfilled my contract. I had 3 kids." She said contract 3 times. She had fulfilled her contract. She was not going to have any more babies. And yes, another picture of the presentations done by other people. But something that really impressed me about those folks is one day we went down to the river, and as we were coming back from the river, we were approached by a young child, one of these emaciated childs. And I think Tim gave him a protein bar. And then, of course, he wanted more, and there was a couple other kids. So Linda gave them a bunch of nuts and other stuff, correct? So anyways, the next day, after the comments about these kids being basically hungry all the time and malnourished, we decided that we were going to get some stuff to bring. So we went to the grocery store in the morning before we headed out. And not that we brought a lot, but we brought some stuff for them. But what they decided to do is to add it to the feast that had already been prepared for us. So I don't know. I kind of like felt like I wanted to do something, say something about that, but I just kept my mouth shut. And that kind of goes to the last thing there. That is a pickup taxi. What a lot of pickup taxis around there. And what it says is, "La vida es así." Basically means that's life. So just go with the flow. One other small thing about politics. as I already told you, my wife and daughter are very concerned about my directional deficiencies. But one night we went out to dinner and we couldn't get a taxi to take us all back because the taxi was pretty busy. So George walked back to the hotel. I walked back to the hotel. But of course, I didn't take a wrong turn. I turned too soon. And so anyways, I get to the top of the hill where I'm supposed to be, and I'm looking for the grandmother house. That's what it's called. And he said, it's on the other side of the city, on the other side of the hill. So I started walking down, and I knew clearly that that was wrong. So I got a taxi, which again are so cheap. And I don't know why, but the first thing the guy in the taxi said is, the best president in the world is Nayib Bukele. And I go, what? I don't know why he brought that up, but he's the president of El Salvador. And he also has a big crackdown too. So no, I told him that I didn't think he was such a great guy. So anyways, he wanted me to hire him to take me around town if I wanted to. But anyways, the election is over. The more conservative party won, and that was affirmed this week by the Ecuadorian Supreme Court, but they're still contesting it. Thanks.
John, if we could go to that next slide. So this is one also Rachel kind of talked about this. The travel around town was a big part of where we spent time. It was actually, it becomes a big part of the fellowship experience because you're jammed in tiny little vans to hold 8 people, and there's 10 of us with our luggage. And we mentioned the rain and the traveling down the river on the way to the animal preserve. But let's go to the next slide. So here, quick story about the grub. I ate the grub before I saw what I was eating. They were already cooked. They didn't look so bad on a barbecue stick. And it was sold to me, hey, it tastes just like bacon. And it actually was like a little salty piece of meat. 2 days later, when we saw those wriggling grubs, I never would have eaten that thing had I seen those first. Let's see. So culturally, the picture in the top left for you guys, that's one of the mayors from one of the communities we visited. Each of the communities had a mayor, a leader. The one picture with Tim, and you see Rachel taking a picture, that's at a butterfly sanctuary you went to. Cool part about that is it's a business. This one gentleman, besides the butterflies for us being cool, this guy sells butterfly larvae like throughout the world. He's got this thriving business. And when you're there, you're just kind of in a jungle in this kind of ramshackle netted thing he built, not knowing that this is like a really big deal, what he does. Oh, and then the food thing. So in that middle picture on the bottom, I'm kind of I'll take chances eating sometimes, especially when you're in third world countries. It's kind of risky. But I ate some shrimp. There were some other things that were kind of unrecognizable I avoided. But I made the mistake of, there was like a corn on the cob kind of a thing. And she had some kind of like sauce in a little squeeze bottle. And I don't know why I thought it'd be like spicy. So I thought, she's like, oh, Lorenzo downplayed his Spanish. He's saying his Spanish isn't so good. Oh my God, he was a godsend for us. Anytime somebody spoke to us, we'd all look at Lorenzo like, what? If it wasn't for Lorenzo, I don't know what we would have done. But I didn't have Lorenzo there when she was telling me about this sauce. And hey, do you want this sauce on your corn on the cob? I'm like, sure. And then as she's squeezing it, for some reason, since I thought it was spicy, I thought it'd be like reddish. And it's this whitest sauce, and she's just coating it. Turns out it was like mayonnaise. They're really big on mayonnaise. Mayonnaise on a sandwich, okay. Mayonnaise on corn on the cob, oh my God, that was terrible. All right. Lastly, I'll talk a little more on this on my next slide. In the bottom right, that's Mike, who was the project manager, our lead at the very far table. But at the front, that gentleman's name is Nick. And Nick is, I'm going to say, the CEO of the NGO Yakum. And for the cultural part of this, I found the work that they're doing just fascinating. And so Yakum actually stands for, in one of the different indigenous languages, it means howler monkey. And the reason they chose that is the howler monkeys, anybody's ever heard of them, they're really loud. So what it's about, it's a call to action. And their call to action is they support indigenous communities in regenerating their rainforests, forest farm foods, and cultural sovereignty. And the cultural sovereignty piece really spoke to me. Like we were doing the food part of this, but the effort that Yakin does is much bigger than that. The indigenous group that we were with, they have no written language. So the only way to pass on their history is, through songs, etc. So this group is actually helping. So what caught me really interesting, I asked him, like, what are the forces working against your effort? And the first thing he said were missionaries, which I was kind of taken aback. The second thing was the education system. And as I started kind of taking it in, I was thinking to myself, I'm processing this, thinking these are outside forces trying to change what the local people, their history. And I started thinking like, well, it's kind of a matter of opinion. Everybody's trying to do what they think is right for these people. So in a less contentious way than it sounds now, I asked him like, how are you guys any different? You guys are coming in thinking what's right for indigenous people. What makes your position, better? And then I found out their board of directors are these indigenous people. So they're doing the implementation of the project, but the indigenous people are guiding this effort and are a big part of it. And found that when we went to one of the villages, one of the women we talked to was on the board of directors. So it made me feel much better about what they're doing. All right, next slide. Rachel touched upon this. One of the really cool things is that whole idea of a forest farm. You had this picture in your mind, and when we're planning, they've just cleared the ground. So it's as close to a cleared area as you'd have, and the plants actually kind of stand out. But then you go to some of these that have been there for 3-4 years, and there was one we were looking at. He pointed out like one tree that was like 4 years old, and this thing's like 40 feet tall. So I mean, you're blown away. Like, did I hear that right? So once these have been there a while, to the naked eye to us, you just think you're walking through the forest, and you don't know you're in this forest farm. And the last cool thing too is as they bring back more and more of the native plants, it brings back the native wildlife, which also helps when we talked about the spears and going getting food. So it brings back their culture about how they used to eat. So this whole holistic system, it wasn't just a reforestation project. Last slide for me, and just about the fellowship. When you're traveling with a group of people 7 days, you're jamming in a van, you're eating breakfast together, you're eating lunch together, you're eating dinner together. You're together from 7 in the morning till 7 at night. It's just, you get to know everybody that you travel with. You get to know, and I love the picture on the far left. That's one of the communities. They're all waving to us. I think Tim mentioned they're so appreciative of our efforts and our support. Yeah, that's it. So anyway, the fellowship part is, it's kind of like this side benefit, but to a lot of us, it's one of the coolest things. So that's it. Linda?
We're running out of time, so I'm just gonna switch through. I took some photos after I looked at everybody else's and said, well, these are some things that are favorite to me. That little van on the left is what we rode in for 3 to 4 hours from Quito to Tena and back with 9 people in luggage. It was fun. There's 4 rows in there somehow. I know my knees were sticking into the person in front of me. So, and then in the far right there is one of the times we're dancing. So, which we did like 3 times. There were nurseries at each of the communities down in the lower right. And then where Lorenzo was getting his face painted, we all got our faces painted to go into this longhouse, which is they don't live in there anymore, but it's a traditional place where normally 4 or 5 families would live. And then just a few things. The center there is us walking to dinner every night. It took different forms, and more dancing at a different community in the upper right. We stayed at a really fun hotel very briefly in Quito, going there and coming back. And it was a llama farm. So it's right at the Quito airport. So we can take questions, and anybody that presented can help answer. Does anybody have questions? We answered everything. Ron.
Just one thing also, some of the bigger cities in Ecuador are being taken over by Mexican cartels, particularly during the beginning of the COVID situation, in particular, like.
Yeah, we didn't actually, the airport's a ways from Quito, and we didn't actually go into Quito. We could have gone there to visit a Rotary, but we wanted to spend more time at the project, which was a ways away. And where we were at, it was very, very safe. We felt safe at all times.
I would agree with that. I mean, we were in the jungle. So it's kind of like when you go out in the woods here and there's nobody around. It was a lot like that. We did come through a checkpoint at one time when we were going between towns where we had to stop, and these armed military people looked in the van, saw all of us looking goofy, and I was trying not to take a picture, and they said, just come on through. But otherwise it felt very, very safe. I never felt. Mhm. Other question, Eric? Minimal. Um, so we saw each village or community that we went to had a school. But Mike, our leader, said that they have a hard time getting books. They don't really, or that they sometimes don't even have books. So yeah, he didn't really know a lot about that, but did. Yeah. Yes, Pat. Let's use a mic for those our attendees on Zoom so they can hear.
I'd just like to offer Alexa an opportunity to say a few words if she'd like to.
I would love that.
What was
Alexa, what was your
what was the
highlight?
most memorable part, Alexa, besides seeing me in the airport on your departure?
Yeah, stand up so we can see ya.
Okay, so for me personally, one of the days when we had gone to visit one of these communities and it was near the end of the day, the kids who were shown up in one of the pictures who had followed us down by the river, they were really friendly. And at one point, I was staying in the van because it was dumping rain and I didn't really want to get wet again. And everyone else was down looking at a garden. So one of the kids came up to the van and was knocking on the window and wanted me to come out and play with them. So I'm taking Spanish right now. I was able to understand very little of what he was saying, but I could get some of it. And I liked being able to talk to him and then the other little kids who came with us down by the river. So that was probably the most memorable for me.
Oh, actually, that little kid showed us a cool trick because they were wearing galoshes. We all bought galoshes. It was raining so much. It was that afternoon. He showed us how to empty our galoshes without looking as goofy as we looked. So he would do this and dump the galoshes out. Like, that's a cool trick. So
Will we be going back?
I'm not sure. We're going back. We're working on, so district grants are due again at the 1st of June, and we're working on a grant right now in Cozumel, Mexico. It hasn't been approved. It hasn't been submitted. I know that Chuck Root is talking to Mike about expanding this project down there. So possibly.
okay.
We got caught the first day out, one of those big rainstorms. And I get home, I had the mistake of having a passport in one of my pockets, my wallet in another pocket. So that night, all my money is laid out on one bed drying, my passport I'm trying to flatten. I think everybody was carrying around toilet paper was like gold. So you had a little thing of toilet paper in a plastic envelope. And if you had an ID, you put a little in a little bag. So that was it. That's all I started carrying in my pocket anymore. An ID and toilet paper just in case, because you never knew where you're going to be.
Yep. That toilet paper was clutch. Okay. Anybody else? All right, thank you to everybody for doing the group presentation, and we'll give ourselves a round of applause. So everybody come up and sign the book. So our book that we're going to donate to the Smart Reader program this week is This Little Artist. So if everybody would come up and sign this afterwards.